Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Smart Talks put on by the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. I am Elizabeth Smart, and I'm here with my co host, Mio Strong. And today we are so lucky and so fortunate to have the incredible Miss Bri Ray. She was a contestant on American Idol. She has gone on to be, she's an incredible singer, but more than that, she's an inspiration and she is an icon of hope. And so I'm so excited to have her today and welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I was so excited when you guys reached out.
I'm just honored you would agree to be on our podcast today. And for a lot of people, I'm sure that your name is familiar, but I was wondering if you could just start off by sharing a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Bri Ray, born and raised in Utah. Woo woo, super exotic. No, but yeah, so I was born and raised in Utah, been singing since I was 8, wrote my first song when I was 8, and then have been kind of going ever since. And I was lucky enough to let music kind of take me all over the country and perform out in DC and Miami and these incredible venues and have incredible mentors, which really helped with my own personal development and my own view of the world and of diversity and women. And so I was really blessed to get that experience and that exposure outside of Utah and like specifically. And so those experiences kind of shaped my passions and drive and work ethic and all the things that I would say make up who I am now.
I think it's amazing. And just that you've had such a broad experience and how you allowed music to kind of take the lead in your life. But music, for as wonderful and incredible and amazing and healing and inspiring as it is, it did lead you down a little bit to a dark place
It
just
did.
in your travels.
Yeah, it really did. And that during that time, like that I took about probably 2 years off of music completely because I felt so betrayed and I felt um I blamed music and I blamed my trauma and my experience on music, and in the sense of like, oh, if I wasn't singing or if I wasn't so talented, I'm just kidding. But if I wasn't touring and if I wasn't doing these things, I wouldn't have experienced that. And so I let all of that anger and all of those emotions just channel straight into music, and I just completely shut it out of my life for like 2 years.
And if you don't want to talk about details, please don't feel pressure to. But if you feel like you're able to talk about what happened,
Yeah.
would that be okay?
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Yeah. At this point, I'm like an open book about it. We have like our whole healing process where it's like full denial and which I definitely went through. But at this point, I'm settled with um, this is my life, this is what happened, but this is where I am now. So, backing up about probably 3 years ago now, I was working with an incredible, incredible group of people who came into my life randomly and ended up being like the biggest blessing. And we were working round the clock, seriously, basically 24/7 on getting songs recorded and released. And anyway, so we're working together for about a year before we planned our first tours. So our first one was we went to play a festival in Vegas, and then we had some shows out in Hawaii after that, which is amazing. Dang it, love being paid to go to Hawaii. That was the best ever. But
Sounds pretty awesome.
I know. But and then we also had an international tour planned for that fall to go to New Zealand, Australia, like New Guinea, all those places. And so this is like something I had been working for my whole life. Since I was 8, I was like, this is what I want to do. I have no doubts about it. This is it. This is my purpose. This is my meaning. This is how I'm supposed to spread good messages, whatever. So I was very excited. So we all hop in the car and we drive down to Vegas, and we get down to Vegas probably 2 or 3 days before our actual show. And we were just hanging out at the music festival, walking around. But the festival had messed up our rooms. And so instead of us having 3 separate rooms, we were all in one room. And just to paint a picture, I had been working with these guys for a full year. They're basically my family. We're like going to church together, doing all the things together. Like I would still consider almost all of them like my uncles, my brothers, like the whole thing. Um, anyway, so they messed up our rooms, and so all of us ended up in one room. And again, my team is all guys. I literally is the only girl, which is not abnormal in pretty much any industry at this point. But so we're all in one room, and they all were very cautious and very understanding of the situation. And so I always was in one bed by myself. No one, like, there was seriously like a little halo of protection. Like, not that I thought I needed it, right? And then everyone else was sleeping on the floor or on the other bed. And then we were all very just aware of the situation because it just was, all the hotels were sold out. It was a big festival and they messed up our reservation, right? So we were just making the best of it. And I felt totally safe. These were guys I have been working with for years. They're basically my family. And then one night, the other performing artist that we were touring with, who I would perform a lot with, I woke up to him petting me pretty intensely. And coming out of like being dead asleep to someone touching you that way, first of all, I didn't even know what was going on. And then as things progressed and I realized what was happening, then I'm in complete shock and horror and terror and completely frozen. So things progress. I eventually am able to get out of the bed and I go and I just sleep in the bathtub for the rest of the night. And he ended up flying out the next morning, early before anybody woke up, to go play a set in California before coming back for our show the next day. And I remember walking out of the bathroom and looking at this, like all of these men that I love and that were family to me, and none of them had any idea what had happened. And I think for me, looking back, that was one of the hardest parts, was that it was like everyone was there, but no one knew, you know? And so I had just gone through this whole thing. No one knew. And I wasn't about to say anything because I was still processing, still really confused. And so I just went throughout the day and was like glued to my videographer's side. He was like my, my little bodyguard that I attached to. And he was probably like, Bri, you're being so annoying, but he was so good. And so I was just glued.
No idea.
Yeah, so I was just glued to him. And so the next day, the tour manager came up and he found out about the room situation, which he was supposed to have known already because the other performing artist said he had called him and like let him know the situation and all of these things. And so everyone was like, okay, cool, like he's aware. But then he got up there and was like, why is Bri in the same room with everybody? Like, so none of that had happened. And he went through hell and high water and just called on all angels, got us a different room. And he had no idea what had happened either, but he took care of the room situation. And then the next night we had our show, we did our set, and I still was in complete denial, not saying anything that happened. And then the next day we flew out to Hawaii. So we get to the airport and just my luck, I am seated right next to him. And so I'm sitting by the window, he's in the middle seat, and then there's a woman that I didn't know sitting on the aisle seat. And seriously, as soon as the plane just started moving, like we weren't even in the air, he grabbed one of the complimentary blankets, draped it over my lap, and shoved his hand down my pants. And
Gosh, these dang airplanes.
seriously, I know. And I know you know. Like, it's, oh, it's so, anyways. So I, again, just frozen, traumatized, not sure what to do. And the main thing I remember is just looking over at this woman that was sitting like right next to him and being like, please see me, like, please notice me, and like just see me, you know? But yeah, so that was a long plane ride. So then we get to Hawaii.
Oh my gosh.
And there were things that now looking back, I wish I had noticed and picked up on. I mean, he was what, like 38, 40 years old, married, had kids, and he would say things to me like, "Oh, your leggings look good, sis," or like, you know what I mean? And there were so many things that now looking back, I'm like, that's not okay. Like, why didn't I pick up on it? And it's hard not to beat myself up about those things, you know?
But
Uh,
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but sometimes I think like growing up, you're raised to be so kind that when people are inappropriate, if it's not like just like blatantly
yeah.
like hands groping you, you're just like, oh, they're just being really nice. And you kind of brush it off in your mind because you don't want to think that someone's creeping on you.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it's just the be nice, like smile, wave, do your thing, like kind of be passive.
Like,
Um,
don't make a scene.
yeah. And I don't think we purposely raise children that way. I think we just overshadow like recognizing inappropriate behavior and calling it out. We just overshadow that with be kind and be loving and
And be
all
respectful.
right.
Uh,
Right. And so I think especially as women, we latch onto that side more than we latch onto the assertive side of like, this is not okay. This is who I am. This is my boundary and you will respect it, period. Or
yeah.
like no question. Right. So I agree with you. I think that's a huge thing. But yeah, so it was a long trip. Um, so we're in Hawaii on tour. I still have not told anybody anything. And I am just in full work mode, like not even really enjoying Hawaii. It is like I wake up, everyone's like, let's go to the beach. I'm like, I'm good. I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna write a song, I'm gonna practice my warm-ups, do my little drills. So I was just in full work mode. I was just, you know how it goes. You just hone in on one thing so nothing else crosses your mind, right? Um, but then my best friend would notice that like I would be out at dinner with everybody, and homeboy would do something or like move his hand in some way that would completely trigger me, and I would shut off completely. Wouldn't talk, wouldn't smile, just like go into a full like robot zone of just like nothing basically. And so there was one night where we were in the room and she was just like, girl, what's going on? I'm like, nothing, dude, I'm fine, we're in Hawaii. It's lit. And she was really persistent. It was like, I can tell like something is not right, like what is going on. So I ended up telling her that night, but I also was like, look, don't tell anybody because we're in Hawaii for another like week and a half. There's nowhere for anybody to go. We still have shows to do. We're all staying together. I'm not trying to cause any kind of drama. And if our tour manager finds out the tour to New Zealand and everything will definitely be canceled. So don't tell anybody.
You wanted to live
Right.
your dream.
Exactly. Exactly. So she agreed and she said, look, I think you should say something right now, but I also feel like it's not my decision to make. So I will be here for you this whole time, like obviously watching out for you this whole time, yada, 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 right? And she did. She was at my side 24/7, 24/7. Like I am so grateful to her forever. But yeah, so we finished up the tour and nothing else happened. There was one moment where he like pulled me aside and was like, sis, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to, like all this stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was just like, he's like, do you hate me? And me being polite and kind was like, no, I don't hate you, but just don't ever do it again. Right. So
I, I I hate that he said, "Oh, I didn't mean to,"
I
because
know.
putting your hand down someone else's pants is a very conscious decision. It's not an accident.
Right. Like petting them heavily in the middle of the night, also not an
Lying in
accident.
bed with someone, that is a conscious decision.
Right, right. I'm like, when I went to sleep, you were not in my bed.
Yeah,
So,
that's not an accident. You did not mean to.
right,
You meant to.
exactly. So we get back from Hawaii, and I still am on full silent mode about everything. And my other best friend ends up finding out everything as well. and they both are in agreement, like not to say anything. And then as I progressed through this little cycle that we go through, I went from like being in complete denial to completely depressed and just, um, and I've never struggled with depression before. I'm so grateful. I've never ever had that challenge. But I definitely was in a really dark place, and my friends were getting really worried. And so there was one night where we were all supposed to have a sleepover, and they bailed on me, which was weird because they hadn't bailed on me like, since being back. Um, and then the next day, the tour manager texted and said, "Hey, you guys, my whole family is sick. Nobody come into the office. Nobody come to the studio. Like all this stuff. Like we're just gonna postpone until like this passes over." So I was like, "Okay, sweet, like day off. I'm excited." And then he texts me separately like 2 hours later and is like, "Hey, there's something I want to run past you. Can you come down?" So I was like, "That's weird." So I go down there. Him and his wife sit me down, and to this day, they're like my second parents. Like I would love them forever and ever and ever. They're the best people on the planet. But they sit me down, and his wife instantly puts like 5 chocolates in my hand. And I was like, my friend's told. And they sit me down, and Nephi, the tour manager, he says, "The first thing I need you to know is that I love you. Um, and I am so sorry that I couldn't protect you more. That I need you to tell me what happened." And I like tried to play it off. I was like, "Oh, like love you guys too. Like, what you mean?" And he's like, "No, like your friends already told us, and like we just need details from you so we know how to move forward." So then all the emotions came out, the whole story came out, and he's like, "I know this is hard for you. The tour's off the table. That won't be happening." And anyways, so all these things progressed, and meanwhile, I am still clinging to this hope in my brain that the tour will happen and all these things, right? So when my parents get involved and we're talking all together, and I'm asked if I want to press charges, I I was like, no, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, A, what about his family? He's the sole income provider. He, if he goes to jail or if anything happens, like I've met his children, like I love his kids with all my heart still, and they would not have income. You know what I mean? And so that was my first thought was who's going to take care of his kids. And then my second thought was, well, if this all blows over and he fixes his act up, then we can still go on an international tour, right? So I was like, no, we don't need to press charges. Like, let's just all talk civilly and like all this stuff. Okay. So him and I had probably 3 more conversations of just him apologizing and me being like, yeah, it's okay, da, 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 right? So all of this stuff happens, and we obviously didn't end up going on the tour, blah, 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 blah. He was lying about so many other things as well that also impacted us not going on the tour. Um, but as I moved out of that time in my life and into more of a acceptance and recognizing what had happened and beginning to move forward with it, I realized that I was only hurting myself um, by being in complete denial, and it's a normal process. It's how it is. Um, but getting to the point where I could look at it, recognize exactly what happened, and remove the blame from myself and remove the guilt of it from myself, and realize like that was not my fault. Like I did everything right that I could have possibly done, and it was not my fault. And his actions do not define in any way who I am as a person, who I am, like, bottom line, how I treat people, how I deserve to be treated. He does not define that for me. And that was a hard place for me to get to.
I love how open you are about talking about how when the opportunity came to possibly press charges that you say, you didn't want to. You said no, because I think and then how this shift kind of happened of acceptance and realizing you did nothing wrong. Because I think a lot of women get hung up, a lot of, not just women, I think a lot of victims get hung up in this moment of saying no, and then years later going on and being like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, I did something wrong. But realizing that you did nothing wrong. I mean, whether you decided to press charges or not, getting to this place of power where you're like, no, I did right. I mean, I think you're such a beautiful example of taking hold of that and realizing that you are blameless in this. This fully falls on him.
Mhm.
And isn't that typical of predators when they when they finally get caught for something, how a multitude of other things come rushing to the forefront.
Mhm.
I mean, I just think you're so strong to be able to talk about that. I mean, I even for myself, uh, and there were definitely have been moments over the years that there are parts of my story that I didn't want to talk about because I felt like it reflected poorly on me. Like I should have been stronger, I should have been braver, I
Oh,
should have
absolutely,
said
yeah.
something. I mean, now I talk about it all the time, so right?
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, really, that was not that long ago for you. I mean, a couple years is that's not that long ago, and to see like how strong you are today, I mean, that's incredible. That's amazing.
Thank you. I have to attribute it to just I seriously just have the most amazing support circle. Like, the people in my life are incredible, and I absolutely could not have gotten through it or be where I am now without their support and their guidance and their midnight phone calls with me breaking down. You know how it goes, but I absolutely. It's just not. I don't think the healing process is something that you can do on your own with things like this. And I think that's the scariest part with women and sexual assault in general is there's so much shame that comes with it that we stay quiet for so long, which means we have zero support. Zero support.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it is important. And one of the things that I hope this podcast achieves is that as we continue to share stories like your story, like Neo's story, like my story, like all these thousands of other, probably millions of other women's stories and survivors' stories, is that the other victims who are listening to this, who are watching this, they realize that they're not alone and that we have an not that anybody wants to be part of this sexual abuse uh, survivor club, but that we have a camaraderie and we have a duty to each other to
Yeah,
pick each other up and to support each other and not to blame each other or find the faults in each other's stories, but to really help support each other and help each one of us move forward.
absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. It is. And I think what's been the most amazing for me as I have begun sharing my story and just really bringing women to the forefront of my conversation and my branding. Um, I think what has been the most astonishing to me is the amount of messages I receive of people with similar experiences because I had no idea. I had no idea that it happens as often as it does and to as many people as it does. And for me, that was the most um, horrifying thing, but also empowering thing to know A, I'm not alone in this, B, it's a massive problem, and C, like they will support me because I'm also speaking out for them. And so it's kind of an interesting support system or camaraderie or sisterhood that comes um, with this. And I guess it's like the little bright spot that comes, after something so traumatizing. But it's a massive community of people.
I think that's why, I mean, I think that's why, I know that's why I do what I do. I
Yeah,
mean, Mia, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably why you do what you do.
Oh, 100%. It all ties together. And I think it all continues our healing by supporting each other. We're also continuing our own personal ability to heal and help others. And even the thing that stuck in my head about your story, besides the idea of that we're taught and kind of raised to be polite and to be quiet and to not take up space and to kind of just go along. It's the same thing with the woman that was sitting on the aisle seat, right? Probably we don't like confrontation. We don't want to cause problems. We don't want to overreact. We don't want to appear too emotional. And so it's another lesson and another reminder to me, like the bystander awareness. And like you mentioned, the sisterhood of support and being willing to put yourself out on the line. I hope you're wrong when you say, hey, are you okay? Or hey, like, just checking in, you know what I mean? Just to see another woman and to recognize that maybe they're in an uncomfortable spot. I hope we're all wrong, but I hope we all have the courage to stand up and to say something, like see something, say something. We talk about that a lot, is how we can move forward together as a community of women and support each other. It's just one of the small things that we can all do. And I think you sharing your story, Elizabeth sharing her story, us having this conversation, this podcast, it's going to just, the ripple effect will be huge. And I hope people reach out for each other, because that's really the most important thing, right? Is each other. We're not alone. It's not our fault. There's nothing we did that could have, caused the sexual assault or the sexual abuse or whatever it is. It's taking the shame away so that the conversation can start, so that the healing can start, and the prevention can also start.
Right. I agree with you. I totally agree.
One thing I wanted to kind of jump back into is your music a little bit, because you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation how you had to step away from music for a little bit because part of you was thinking, oh, if I hadn't been doing this, this wouldn't have happened. And actually, I think that's pretty common. A lot of survivors suffer from PTSD when it's connected to an activity. We suffer from PTSD for many, many reasons, or we have flashbacks, with the slightest of thing that you might not think affects you. Like for me, not so much anymore, but I've never liked orange juice, but I especially hated orange juice after I came back, because while I was kidnapped, my captor used to mix vodka with orange juice and make me drink it. And so even just the smell of orange juice when I got home, I just couldn't stand it. Now, like, I've worked through it and like I've been able to get beyond it. I still don't personally like orange juice, love oranges, hate orange juice. Don't ask me why. It's always been that way. But I can smell and I can be around it now. But that's not uncommon to have these associations and have them be negative. And so what I really am interested in hearing about in your story is, how did you reconnect back to music? How did you bring music back into your life?
Mm-hmm. It took 2 years, right? So I tried to do a show like pretty recently, like after everything had happened. And I never get nervous, like ever. I'm like, put me on stage, baby. I would rather be in front of 100,000 people than 5, right? Like, I love it. And I've never been nervous. But I remember trying to do that show and I was terrified to go on stage, which is something I had never felt before. Stage fright did not exist in my life. And so I'm like shaking on stage. My voice is like, and I realized it was because all that I was remembering was being on tour with him and doing these shows and singing these duets with him and all of these things and feeling his eyes on me. And so then every time I was on stage, I would just like remember that feeling and feel so disgusting. And so I hated it. And then I couldn't write because my emotions were so centered on what had happened. But I wasn't ready to write about it because I didn't want to. So I couldn't write anything. So pretty much just all music in my life just took a complete halt. And then there was one of my friends sent me this article called Faith is Pointed Towards the Future. And I read through it like every day ever since she sent it to me. And basically, overview message is you can't change what has happened. And whether it's something someone has done to you or something that you've done, it doesn't help anybody to keep digging it up and being like, oh, remember this? Oh, remember this? Oh, I'm like, because then everybody is just dirty. The person digging it up, the person you're digging it up to, like everybody's just dirty, and it gives no favors. There's no point in that. And faith is pointed towards the future. Happiness pointed towards the future. Hope pointed towards the future. And that's not to say the past doesn't matter, right? But it's just to say, like, where are you focusing? And where are you putting your focus? Where are you setting your goals? Where are you going towards rather than where are you staying? And so that article seriously became my rock, and I would read it every day. I was so obsessed with it, and I still read it all the time. But it really helped me a ton. It helped me a lot. And after a few months of that, I finally sat back down at the piano and wrote a song called Woman, which I released late last year. And it was just about my story and my experience and how I felt about it now and where I want to go with it. And that was the main breakthrough for me. And then I've been back in music and going ever since.
Have you been able to go on tour now?
Just small ones. I went mostly just local, like just up north, down south, things like that. My main focus right now is getting an EP and an album and stuff recorded and put out, and then going on a larger tour.
Amazing. So that's still your dream.
Yes, it is. Still lights my fire.
Well, I have no doubt you're going to achieve it.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch your journey. Do you feel like the writing of songs, have you always written songs, or is this something new like that you've done to cope, or is this?
Yeah. So I wrote my first song when I was 8, and so a little backstory with my family is I am literally my dad in female form. Period. Like, seriously. And I look like him, I talk like him, I act like him. We are like literally the same person. But I have never been, my mom and I struggled because my dad could read me like a book because, hi, I'm literally him. And my mom wouldn't get it. So it'd be like, I would come home from school and my mom's like, hi, how was your day? I'm like, fine. And my dad's like, what's up? What happened? You know what I mean? Like, and so we always struggled with that. But so I would use songs to talk about my emotions. And then she would like listen to me writing and playing from the other room and like kind of know what was going on. And so songs have always been that outlet for me. It's always been a really safe and creative way for me to release intense emotions that I'm experiencing. And so when I couldn't do that for 2 years, it was just like this complete overflow of emotions, happy, sad, mad, all the emotions, all the feelings. And so I just bottled up for 2 years, which is a whole different issue, right? So being able to write that first song coming out of it was an incredible release.
And tell me about that process a little bit. Was it just like it spilled out of you, or was it this like long process of revisions and just making sure it was just right, or how did that look for you?
Yeah, so it's actually funny because it kind of spilled out of me at first, which happens sometimes. Sometimes it takes me like months to write a song, and sometimes it takes me 30 minutes. It just depends on the song. But this one I sat down and hit 2 chords on the piano, and I was like, that's it, 2 chords, the whole song, keeping it simple. Like, and then the words just came. And I think it's because they had always been there, and they were like, when are you gonna open your mouth, girl? Like, come on, we're ready to go. And so the words came really quickly. And then probably a year after I wrote this song is when I actually finally got into the studio with this incredible producer that I'm working with now. His name is Joshy Soul, but finally got into the studio with him, and I was at a place with the song and a place with the story that I could then take feedback, right? And like we could like look at the song and be like, okay, from an artistry and marketing standpoint, where are we at? Like, what does it look like? Things like that. So that's when revisions and all of these things came. And I could not be more thrilled with the way it turned out.
It's amazing. Would it be inappropriate to put you on the spot and ask you to sing it for us?
No, I definitely can. That's fine. I haven't played it in a minute, like myself, self-accompanying, because I usually use a band. So we'll see how this goes. If I totally botch it, I'm going to send you the recording. Just use that.
No, you'll be amazing. I know it.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Let him use you. Let him whistle at you on the street. He's got needs too. And you're nothing but a fresh piece of meat. As a woman, just a woman. When he calls you, better answer before he hears ring 3. Why respect you when he's everything that you'll never be? As a woman, just a woman. Sit up straighter and make sure you cater to what he wants. Dim your fire, 'cause it's not proper to be bright when he's not. As a woman, just a woman. When you argue, just know he's right, because you'll never see the world from his shoelace. Don't be naive in thinking that you're free. As a woman, just a woman. Sit up straighter and make sure you cater to what he wants. Dim your fire, 'cause it's not proper to be bright when he's not. As a woman, just a woman. This is not a sex issue, but a power issue. Born by the belief that he has immediate rights to our jobs, our dreams, our minds, and our bodies. A belief fed by the fear that if we speak, he is all that we hear. A belief that solidifies each time we are criticized, then obey when told to sit still and be quiet. Change will not come silently. Speak. Invest in your right to human decency. Speak. You can be known without being touched. Speak. Please do not link that kind of pain to love. Speak. There is power in numbers. And there is power in women. Invest in your voice. Know your choice. Speak until they hear you, and let us speak with you.
Oh,
our chicken skin. That's so good.
Thank you.
Oh, you're right.
Thank you.
Bri, where can people find you? Like, what's your Instagram handle? Like, give us ways that we can support you and follow along with you.
Sure. I am the Bri Ray on everything. The like Bri, Bri, Ray on literally everything. So you can stream. Woman is available on Spotify, Apple Music, all the streaming platforms. It's also on YouTube and SoundCloud, I believe. And then all social media platforms. Would love to chat, hang out, get to know you.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll put a link in this when we produce this. We'll put a link to the whichever the Spotify or the YouTube video because people need to have this. Love it.
Thank you.
It's amazing. You've been absolutely you're incredible. You're amazing. You're powerful.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much as a survivor myself for being brave and sharing your story with such candor and honesty and vulnerability, really, and not being scared. I mean, it takes a huge amount of courage. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today and share your incredible gift to the world, your voice and your music and your song. I loved it, loved every second. I'm definitely going to be downloading that as soon as we get off because I'm like ready to start crying.
Thank you.
So thank you for making time to be with us today. And I can't wait to see where your journey takes you. I will definitely be cheering you on every step of the way.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's been so nice to meet you both virtually.
Maybe one day it'll be in person.
I know. Yeah, we'll after all of this lockdown is done, we'll have to all go to lunch or something.
I love it.
Yes.
All right. And with that being said, I want to say thank you to everyone tuning in for today's podcast. Make sure you catch us next time and we will see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.